Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Fola Alabi.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to another great episode on the Strategic Project Leader. We are coming at you live, and so I want to know where you are joining us from as well. Let me know in the comments, because today is going to be a great episode because I've got a fantastic leader with me in the studio. But aside from that, when we think about projects I think about this as they bring about turn ideas into reality, be it a capital project, be it your home renovation, be it an IT transformation, everything that turns an idea into something tangible within a time frame that leverage resources is a project. And so what projects are you actually working on in this particular season? Let us know as well in the comments, because we're going to be talking about capital projects. These are projects that pretty much cost a lot, maybe a little bit more complex. And I've got an exceptional leader who has been able to dive into so many complexities. And we're going to be talking about front-end loading. When I think about front-end loading, I remember when I was on a major project myself, it was about a $32 billion project for major infrastructure here in Canada. There were so many things that happened, from the front-end engineering design to dealing with so many contractors, dealing with shippers. But the fact is, there are key things that can ensure that we can be successful as project professionals. In order to leverage those skills and in order to actually understand those things, there are some secrets. And when I bring up my leader today, you're going to know why this is extremely important. But first, just let me know, I am in Calgary, in Canada. Thank you so much, Abiodun, for joining us from Saudi Arabia. We've got Marco as well joining us from Los Angeles. Let me know where you're joining us from. And remember, you have a chance to get your questions answered live. So put them all in the comments, because when we get to the Q&A section, you will be able to get into all of this. Goodness, I've got Mohammed as well from Riyadh, and I've got Tabaya. Oh, goodness, great to see you. But first, let me introduce my leader. When I think about exceptional leaders who have paved the way for other people over the years, this gentleman is one of them. He's a civil engineer with a postgraduate in construction management and an executive MBA. So think about the MBA. So he brings the business side as well to project management. He brings over 2 decades of experience within the construction space, where he's actually been able to work on industrial projects. And currently he's a director and works with a division in Deloitte all the way in Brazil. He's worked on different confidential investments. He's been able to support clients from all over the world, from portfolio management to different mega projects in Brazil, Peru, in Canada, in Oman, Australia, and in Malaysia as well. Can you please give me a round of applause as I bring them straight? I hope I get this right. Andrea Choma. Andrea, how are you doing this wonderful morning?
Hi, Paula. I'm great, and I'm really honored to be here. I'm a fan of your show. I think you bring so many important topics to our project management community. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about a topic that I'm passionate about, that is the front-end loading. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here today. It's such a great pleasure. When I meet leaders who are really passionate about change, who are really walking the talk, I want to showcase them, and I want the world to obviously see the great work that you're doing and also say thank you. So we want to thank everyone for joining. We're going to be diving straight in because there's not enough time. There's so much to unpack. When we think about front-end loading, what exactly does that mean in a nutshell?
Great. Front-end loading is about value creation. When you get from a good opportunity, a good business opportunity, until the moment that you decide to go to execution. So we call it project development, project planning, since the business case development until what we call the FEL3, or the end of basic engineering, when you have your final investment decision. So this is the portion of the project where value is created, when risks are assessed, and when the project team can proper plan those projects to have a good execution and deliver the outcomes that the business needs. So the front-end loading brings a different approach to project development, since its objective is to reduce risk from execution, as I said. So how can we do this for big projects, for complex projects? We will try to split this development stage into three different parts. So the first one we call the FEO1 is the business case development. When you assess the opportunity, you assess the market, you assess your competitors, you assess your capabilities to take advantage of that opportunity, and then develop the business case in order to plan for this new asset that you bring to the market. So that's the first stage. And you know more about the project, you know about the high level risks. We call the fatal flaws. So if you have a site that you think, okay, I will never get the environmental permit at this site. So let's move on to a different approach or a different site and so on. So the big issues you start to investigate during FEO1. Then we can move. If the project is right and still a good opportunity is feasible, you move to the next stage. You invest a bit more. The FEO1 will spend around 0.5% of the total capex, the total amount of money of the project, just 0.5% during that study phase. Then you move to FEO2, when we define the final concept. It's the phase that people know as a conceptual engineering, but has lots more than that. You develop the best approach for that asset. You assess different perspectives, different alternatives for scope, process technology, the size of the new plant or the infrastructure you're going to build, and so on. And then you start moving with the project. You start the environmental permit process. You start doing a better planning of project execution up front. You need to identify the whole scope and prepare for that. And then you have a new estimate of cost and schedule and get back to the business case to check if the project is still feasible, if it's still a good opportunity. So the FEO2 phase, we will spend around 1 or 1.5% of total capex. So you're making a little investment to build value on that opportunity. At the end of this stage, if the project is okay, the business case is still good, you can then move to the FEO3 phase. So between each phase, we have what we call the gates. So we do the assessment, you take the project, get into executive discussions, assess the market and so on, and decide if the project is going to move on or not. Moving to
I
the
love
FEO.
that, but I don't want us to get too deep. I want us to go back to the FEL one, right at the beginning. At this stage, as you said, we are looking at the opportunity. Because this is absolutely critical because a lot of the time, so many schools of thoughts around there that talks about detailed planning. And then you look at the business case and we think about why are we doing this project? What are the benefits? How is this, going to impact maybe the economy, especially for major infrastructure projects? So what are the key things you think are absolutely critical that organizations and leaders need to think about during this whole definition phase when we're really, prospecting to be sure that we cover all the markets? So what are those things?
Great, it's a great question. I think that two items are crucial at that stage, and we see so many flaws in projects coming from it. The first is a clear definition of objectives, what the company really wants with that project. Okay, usually in the industrial sector, we want to make money, but you have different ways of making money with higher or lower margins, with higher or lower OPEX, the operating costs, with larger assets, smaller assets, new technology, or already proven technology. So, this direction that is given from the business to the technical side of the team is crucial to define the path that the project will follow in the next stages. So, it's a decision that it doesn't require a lot of investment, right? It's maybe a few meetings and an assessment using your strategic plan, but it's crucial for the development of the rest of the project. So one thing is real the objectives and how they are not feasible with the conditions that you have. For example, we want to increase our scale, so we are going to build a mega project and we need this mega project to be operating within 3 years. So you'll probably not do it. You cannot get both at the same time, speed and size. So let's get back to the objective. I need to lower my operational costs and using scale for that, okay, that's fine. But I'll have this asset maybe in 6 or 7 years from now, not in 3. But if I need to get to the market with more products in the next 3 years, okay, so let's have a different approach and have a plan that we can scale. So we'll build a smaller one right now, and then we can scale. So giving the direction. And the other important thing that is not well discussed is the project driver. I mean, which is the most important aspect of the project that usually comes between two maybe opposite sides, cost or schedule. We don't talk about much about operational efficiency because it is important. I need a plan that can operate, and we don't put in this equation, for example, construction or operational safety, because safety will come up on the top of everything. So you have to decide between cost and schedule. So if you want your project to be less expensive, you need to study a lot of alternatives and get to the most efficient design that you can. If you need speed, you need to come up with a different strategy. Maybe, as I said, a modular approach that needs to be proper planned for you to achieve that result. The problem is that when the driver is not well set, the team will be going to different directions during project development. And we see so many projects rushing for speed. And when they become too expensive, the business decides to start cutting scope. So it is speed or scope or cost. People don't know. So I think
Yeah,
that those things are crucial in FL1.
absolutely. I know there's always it's almost like a tussle between cost, quality, and the speed, the schedule, right? Something has to give. Because at the end of the day, you cannot achieve the three of them. So when we think about the prospecting phase, we need to understand what is the client, what are the client's needs, and how can you balance that. I think that's absolutely critical. So what tools have you leveraged when you think about opportunity and you presenting opportunities? How have you been able to help your clients look at those options and create the best, position forward? Is there anything that you leverage and that people can actually learn from?
Yes, that's the start of our approach here as strategic leaders. I mean, everyone in the project team is a strategic leader because if you are responsible for the project engineering, if you are responsible for the project schedule, everyone needs to come up together to help the company to achieve that goal that was set. So we can influence from the technical side the business decisions by bringing this experience and saying, okay, we need to lower our operational costs. If we do this through scale, it will take more time. So we need time to plan the project. We need time to implement the project. We cannot do it, as I said, in 3 years. So let's bring back this experience, not only taking the technical part of the engineering or the challenges of construction or the raining seasons that you have during construction, and will just uh, prevent the project from being delivered faster, but getting the lessons learned from the last projects and bringing back to the business with facts, with data to help them to take to make the decisions. So one thing that happened to me one time, I was working in a company, I was responsible for all their projects, and then the CEO and the CFO, they called me to a meeting and said, okay, we just did a new version of our strategic planning, and here's what we are going to do. We're going to double our size in 5 years. To do that, we need to construct 5 big projects during these next 5 years. And then I looked at it, they started to go project by project, and I told them, okay, so this project here, we don't have the land yet. We need to go through the permitting process, and then you go to the earthworks. It'll take a lot of time, and then you're gonna build it. So you cannot fit this into your strategic plan. It take more than 5 years to do everything. So let's work it out to see what options do we have to keep the company growing and get the best that we can from our assets, but in a practical way. So the technical part was missing. In a spreadsheet, everything made sense. Okay, let's double, let's invest, and we have this project in 2 years and that one in 3 years. But in practice, it's not going to happen. So I think that this is one part that is important for project teams and project leaders to begin to be more integrated with the business, understanding what are the needs coming from the business and feeding them with the technical options that we have to get to those results. And if we don't can, explain why and try to bring alternatives. We are still seeing that there is this huge gap between strategy and project execution. This is classical in our field, right? Well, we're seeing PMI talking about this from many years ago, and we are still seeing that. We need to strengthen this connection between the technical team and executives. And this was crucial in my career, talking about how these concepts of front-end loading helped me to now be an executive by understanding the whole context of the project and where the main risks are, and bringing back to the business saying, okay, we have this challenge here. So let's work together to see how we can maybe change the scope or change the strategy and be aware of. So that's one path that the project managers that are here with us right now can work on to be closer to the strategic leaders.
I love that. I think overall, I want to be sure. Can you hear me clearly as well? Is everything good?
Yes, now it's better.
Fantastic. Okay, I just had to change that source as well. When we think about change and we think about perspective, we think about all these options as well. At the end of the day, overall, it comes back to what the business wants, right? Because a
Yes.
PM can have all the ideas, the 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 team can feel that we could do this change, but what exactly is the business need? And you made a very interesting point that project managers and project professionals needs to understand what those key business drivers are. Be really connected to the business to understand the why behind it. Is it about creating better infrastructure because of the cost factors, because of the environment, is it because of technology? And ensuring that all through our project, as we prospect, that has to be front and center because even when risk does actually come up, we need to come back and say, revalidate. Is this risk, is this issue, is this going to affect the overall foundation of what this project is actually really about? How have you been able to help team members really understand and stay in focus and stay on track to what is really truly important? Because at times, as you know, the engineers can come and say, we are building, maybe it's an infrastructure project. I'm going to just focus on my engineering design. The cost people are going to say, I'm going to keep tracking the numbers. That's kind of where my own piece is. And then we're going to have, the people on the front end saying that things are just not going the way we plan. How have you been able to train and support people, especially from the start, so everyone can be on the same page and be tied back to the overall business case?
This is really, really important because we have probably millions of professionals working in capital projects, infrastructure projects around the world, and very few of them pass through some kind of training to show this importance of integration among all disciplines in the project plan that will keep a cohesive plan on place. So, as you said, I'm here working with, I had an example a few years ago. We are assessing a project team in EFO 3 gate, so right before execution. And we are doing the maturity assessment when we do an evaluation of the project plans and the project risks to help the executives to make the decision of going forward or not. And they were discussing about the process technology. And we came up and said, come on, this is something that you need to decide up front in FEL2 because all the
Mm-hmm.
rest of your engineering will depend on that. And if your engineering depend on that, your CapEx, your cost estimate depend on that. And your schedule and your operational readiness plans and your permits. So if you're having this kind of discussion right now, we need to look the project as a whole and see that it doesn't matter if your cost is right, if you compare to your engineering, your material takeoffs and so on, because your scope is uncertain. So we need to look beyond our disciplines. We really need an integrated project team that can help the business to achieve those objectives. So it goes to training, lots and lots of communication, and active participation of the project sponsor with the project team. One thing that concerns me a lot is that I see so many project sponsors acting as clients. And although most of them have those two different roles, we see people putting more pressure on project teams instead of helping them to overcome those barriers and have more resources and have more time to develop a good project. And what we see very constantly is that project teams don't feel comfortable to raise the risks up to the business because this is mandatory to finish this FEL phase until the end of the year. Our bonuses are attached to it. We
That's
need
tied to
to
it.
Yeah, we need to hand over the project to the next team, which will perform the execution, which I don't agree, but it happens a lot. There's companies that have different teams in different stages. So I need to do my work and pass it forward. And people do it because they are instructed this way. They really are concerned with the project. They are concerned with the organizations. But the context is set up in a way that everyone only has time to develop their own schedule and their own discipline. And okay, the project's not perfect, but it's mandatory to finish by December, and that's the best we can do. And what we see at the end, we see assets that don't perform as expected. We see
Yes.
huge cost deviations. We see the delays and so on. So integration is key. And once again, bringing the executives together with the team to have the best of both worlds. You have the technical part feeding the strategy and the strategy following what's needed to be done in the technical side to have a better asset at the end.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many components here. And then you've spoken about there's kind of like the stakeholder management piece. When we think about the executive levels coming to their own level to say, right now we have this work to do. This is kind of what your role is overall. The project team as well, making them understand this kind of what your role is, but ensuring that everyone is fully integrated. You spoke about training and better communication, ensuring that the objectives are clear and everyone knows what needs to happen. But I think there's that concept as well around winning together because the engineers who are going to be, maybe if it's an infrastructure project or you're building a pipeline or a bridge or whatever it is, you can have a fantastic engineering design. But if everyone doesn't come together to deliver this project cohesively, it's still going to be a failure. So when you move right through from that business definition stage, I'm going down to FEL2, getting the teams to understand those alternative and selection piece as well, understanding that just the technical piece cannot work in isolation. There's a financial piece that comes in place. There's probably the political side as well that you have to manage. How have you been able to get all these moving parts to come in cohesively so everyone pretty much is on the same path, on the same table?
Good. We see, as we said earlier, a lot of challenges when you don't have a clear objective. So it's hard for any project manager to get the teams together with all the stakeholders that are involved. First of all, if the objectives are not clear, because as we are
Yes.
saying here, the engineering will go to one side, the cost estimating will go to another side, and so on. So that's the first thing. The second is never underestimate the importance of integration and communication. You need to
Mm.
bring everybody together. As I said, the learning part is really important because so many times we see that some what we call the FEL deliverables are seen as bureaucracy. So now I
Mm.
need to do a stakeholder management plan now to go to the gate. No, you're not doing for the gate. You're doing for your project because you need to deal with the stakeholders along the way. You need to deal with your service providers. You need a procurement plan. You need everything. So getting everybody on board, you can only do it if you have clear objectives and if people see that it's feasible to achieve those goals. Because in another way, if those goals are too aggressive, that nobody is really bought into it, it's not going to happen once again. So clear objectives, a plan that is feasible, really integrating the project team by bringing the best part of each discipline, making sure that everyone understands that the project as a whole is the most important thing. So it's not the
Yeah.
best engineering, is not the most detailed schedule. No, it's the project that comes from design to implementation. And proper time for planning, because so many times you have great teams working on projects most of the time, but they don't have enough time space to develop the project as they should. So they are all trying to do their best, but the project will not be as good as expected. It is frustrating for everybody because they can see the problems, but they cannot talk about it. If you don't create a safe environment, and this is part of the role of the project sponsor, people will just do what they are told to do. They will deliver the numbers that you told them to deliver, and they will pass the task to the next team to implement, and we see the disasters. So create a safe environment for everyone
True,
to
bro.
bring up their
Yeah.
concerns and identify the right risks.
I love that. And one thing I want to peek, I know from the previous one, because for this podcast, we are not really going into all the details when we talk about front end loading, but I want to really pull out the things that you never really learn or get to see, like on a course online and stuff. So ideas that people are probably scared to talk about. When you spoke about sponsors, dealing with our sponsors at times may be a challenge. And these are the people who are making the main decisions on these projects and ensuring that they don't cross the line, as you said. Some sponsors will get the clients, and at times you have the business. How have you been able to manage it, especially when there are like so many conflicting ideas? How do you get the sponsors in check to understand what is truly important?
That's a huge challenge for project teams because, as we said, they don't have much time with their sponsors usually. We're talking about busy executives, but when you have the chance or when you have an issue that you need to bring to your sponsor, so many times I see people that are too, how can I say, they're too worried about talking about the technical part. You have this difficulty in this foundation because this kind of pile will have this. And for the sponsor, it doesn't matter. He doesn't understand this kind of language. So you need to bring the final impacts that it might happen to the project outcome. So okay, if you go with this strategy, we are putting our schedule in risk and our start of production in risk, because what can happen is we can have found out that the soil is not as we expected. We need those tests to become available before we start the procurement part and so on. So bring the impacts to the business for this talk. And this is hard because we are dealing with people that are great technical leaders, people that are working in the industry for 20, for 30 years, developing very complex projects. And sometimes they have this barrier to understand the final impacts in terms of time and cost and impact on production, or some
Yes.
impacts that might happen to external stakeholders, and bring that way to the business. Okay, we are exposed now to a bigger risk because of this, because of that, and we can create a problem to our client in the future and so on. So, and this is how we think we can fix it. Not only bring the problem, but bring options to facilitate the work of the executive. So, try to understand those objectives and how your work and your team's work impact on those objectives strategically, so you can bring it to the table with the project sponsor. It'll be much better for the sponsor, much better for the executive, and put it on spotlight for them.
Fantastic. Now, I wanted to dive into a different angle now. You have your sponsors who hopefully are now in check. You understand what the business options are, what the opportunity actually exists. How does technological advancement affect with changing market conditions? How does it affect front end loading? How can we leverage this as project leaders and project managers to be more adaptable, more resilient? So, what technological advancement, kind of like tools have you leveraged, and what can they leverage as well to pretty much ensure project success can be achieved?
We now have a condition that is very different from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, to advance through the advance of technology to develop better projects. So if you look only to build information modeling, what is it brought to the project environment in terms of developing concepts and alternatives, like you have the digital twins at the end, but as you can modulate those alternatives and check for interferences, a check for better designs, check for more cost-effective designs upfront. You now spend less money to do that than it used to be before. But we are seeing that companies are still struggling to use this in practice because, first, of the lack of professionals that have the skills to do it, even in the engineering contractors, and the time to study those alternatives. So we have one side bringing better condition for us to study those projects, and from the other side, we are trying to pressure even more the tight schedules that we have. So what we can do, use technology as the most that we can. For example, I see companies that work with modular construction, of site construction companies that are building digital twins. They are building mock-ups and going fast to the factory and test it and bring the feedback again and improving the process. So we don't see much of that in the, let's call, traditional construction, although you can do the same. So let's do a tryout. Let's do some testings on the field that we can improve our design. So we can make a better use of this technology in terms of design, in terms of cost estimate, because if I integrate the design to my cost base, I will lower the chance to leave something out of my cost estimate. We already integrate with our schedules, and we can work on better what we call constructability plans. So with the 3D design, we can see where are the best places to put the cranes and simulate the assembly of the plant, putting on the equipment inside the building and so on. And this gives an opportunity for the project team to see much more detail than we were used to do it before. So this is one part. Another one is communication, because when you have the engineering part is more clear to everybody, it's much easier for all disciplines to understand how the project will be developed on the field. It increases safety because you can check the points that are more that brings more risk for the construction on site. You now have platforms to improve communication among the stakeholders during FEL and during execution. And now we are getting into starting to touch on artificial intelligence to maybe in a few months from now, not years, start to bring different design ideas to our projects and update our schedules and cost automatically. We are doing a lot of things with Power BI and so on, but then with artificial intelligence, start to having these numbers on real time for us. We're already using drones to check the advance on the field. So many things that we have as opportunities. So always, when I talk to my team, I say, get the most that you can of it, because the construction industry is finally changing, and it's changing really, really fast. And this is great. This creates a lots of opportunities. So we can leverage that to add more value to our companies and have more efficient designs and more efficient constructions to have better assets.
100%. I think it's being able to leverage technology, especially around reporting, but especially for our contractors on the field, being able to get real-time data as to where processes are at, where engineers what they are currently doing, where the build stage is, and having that real-time data. I believe AI is gonna be like on the ball to help us achieve that and achieve that really quick. On the same note around artificial intelligence and technology as well, what exactly have you seen could be the pitfalls as well? Because as you know, with everything, that kind of seems great. What
Yeah.
have you seen as a pitfall that technology, may, may have, when it comes to our construction and those major infrastructure projects as well? What can you see from the horizon?
I think maybe one thing that concerns me a lot is that we've seen companies from year to year reducing their own teams. So the experiences are going out, and this is since the 1980s. This is not new,
Yeah,
but it continues to happen. I've seen a mega project, for example, with a project team from the owner side of two people, a mega project. So and everything else was third parties. So you still need experience to leverage value, even though you're using artificial intelligence. So, sorry, who will check the design? Who
drink
will
some water,
bring?
please. We want some water. Drink some water.
Okay,
Yeah, just read that right, drink. I know this is really interesting, when we think about this, because when we think about skills, you've raised a very, very important point. Human capital is one piece that we are definitely losing. The age around where we've got these experienced leaders who have worked on so many mega projects. I remember someone saying that they built, we think about the Great Wall of China, the pyramids, these pieces were built, they're still there from thousands of years. We're slowly kind of losing this knowledge. And maybe people feel that, like, hey, I can do this, right? We don't need like the team members. We're going to create that report. And so, yeah, so back to you. I want to get some more insight. What are you seeing? Yeah.
yeah, we need experience. First thing, it's really, really important. And the owner team is the one who has the chance to see how projects develop and how operation is going. So I can bring everything to the table to develop better projects because the owner side knows how to operate those infrastructure or those plants and so on. So it's still very important. This is the most important part. AI will certainly leverage value by compressing the times that we are talking here to develop a good design, to develop a good schedule, help a lot. We bring up risks that maybe we didn't notice before. So will help us to treat those risks and develop better plans. But the part of the experience, that's differential. That's what is important for the company to develop a more competitive asset and have the advantage among their competitors. And the other side is what is the real quality of the database that we have from past projects? We don't see that. So how are we expecting to feed the artificial intelligence with data
Learned.
if we don't have
Right.
data?
Yes. Lessons
So
learned and data.
yeah, so I think that this is the biggest pitfall, thinking that you will not need so many people anymore, and there are not many, and you don't have quality data to train your database. So you're still thinking that somebody in Microsoft or Google will launch something that you put a question there and the project will be ready for you and you substitute your team. So you need to put more effort on that before starting get real value. And many companies are thinking that, okay, we need to start using that because then I can reduce my headcount. I can speed up my projects, but without a proper preparation.
This is a perfect segue for Project Lifestyle. That's right. My leader here, Andre, just spoke about something extremely important. He was just talking about data. When I think about mega projects and I think about change, I think about how can we make better data-driven decisions? Because when we think about multiple infrastructures, or you think about major investments that we are making on a daily basis, the question is how can we make data-driven decisions? And so for Project Lifestyle today, I thought about what exactly can we be doing to help improve our data literacy. How can we ensure that we're making the right decisions? And how can we make sure we're getting the outcomes that we want? And for me, I came up with some couple of pieces. I know that Andrew has mentioned this even with the side of the business. but always think about planning. We've spoken about planning, but how deep and how well do you collect data today, and how do you leverage the information from past projects? How can you leverage information from things that have been done before? So collecting information and storing that information in a space where it's easily accessible. And I know we talk about creating a safe environment as well, where even in your home, even around you, where people kind of feel that even if things went wrong, can I really share that information? Is it okay? Am I going to get burned for that? Or are people going to say that, gosh, how come that project manager, or how come you did that? You made that financial decision. Safe environments are absolutely critical. But collecting information and ensuring that it's available is also another thing. So making data-driven decision ties back to the information that you have, the data you collect, and ensuring that you clean that out, so from quality assurance, analyzing that information, and interpreting that data as well. That's a key piece. Be it a business project, be it a family project, be it anything you're thinking about, having the right information and then being able to assess the risk involved is extremely important. And when we think about a risk, we all know that it's anything at all that could potentially impact the outcome of what you're trying to achieve. And then you can tie a value to that to say, based on the impact, is it going to cost me money? Is it going to cost me my sleep? Is it going to cost me the team's effort? Or whatever that is, it's critical to understand what the risks are so you can make better decisions. The silver lining that ties everything is about communication. Because you can have information, you can have data. If it's not communicated properly, then it actually makes no sense. Overall, it takes planning, it takes having the right information, it takes assessing the information you have, making the right decisions to ensure that you can get the outcome that you want overall. It's like I think about projects and I think about it. I want us to now dive into a little bit. I know we've just spoken about data-driven decisions, but let's take that a little bit deeper when we think about like at the FEL3 stage, where now we have looked at option, we've looked at risk, and we're now like planning execution. How can we ensure that we can make better data-driven decisions at this particular point to ensure that we can increase the overall success rate? Because you know that they said over 65 to almost at the time you hear 95% of mega projects even fail. The data kind of varies. And execution is where we spend the greatest bank, the greatest money. How can we now use data-driven decisions to ensure that we can increase our rate of success?
Great. So as you said, during FEL3, we have the detailed plan for execution. And once again, it's the owner's responsibility. You have your basic design, you have the strategy in place. You are pretty sure that you can build the project the way that you planned, because we love to leave it to the contractors and say, okay, the contractor will detail the schedule later on. Okay, if the contractor can do better than that, he will prove to you, and then you change your plan. That's no big deal on that. But you must make sure that the way you planned is feasible, so you can put into the market and get the best contractors out there. If you don't do it, you'll be just drowning on claims and disputes during execution. So you work on your plan, have everything set up, you have your environmental permits, you have your procurement plan on place. And when you get to the final investment decision at the end of FEL3, if you do what we call a maturity assessment, that I do it a lot, you can pretty clearly see how the project is supposed to unfold from that point on. Because you get all the elements as we already discussed, but now they're more mature, they're more detailed. You have your basic engineering. It is really finished. It was checked. Did you do any kind of design review with it? Your BIM model is okay. You have all the attributes that you need. It's integrated with your schedule and your costs. Are other uncertainties that you didn't uncover before that you need to treat at this point? How the team is really prepared for project execution in terms of project controls and so on. So when you do this assessment, and then it's very important, this assessment to be independent, because for the project team, the project's ready to move to execution. We are just anxious to get into execution because the time frame is really tight. So in this kind of assessment, we can check the project from top to bottom starting with the objectives and drivers we said before that must come from the FEO1 and the project history until that point to see if the project's really ready to move on or not. And then we have this opportunity to assess the risks and check mainly what we put in the project in terms of contingency in cost and schedule, because this shows a lot of the risk profile of that project, and assess it with some metrics, how the project's real detailed or not, how many tasks do you have in your execution, is it tied to procurement, is it tied to detail engineering, and you have the contingency, you have the risk plan, you have your Monte Carlo simulation, and you bring it all together to see if the parts are really integrated or not. And most of the time they are not. So we can provide
We
this
don't
kind
want
of
that.
data.
We don't want it. Most of the time,
I
they're
don't want
not.
it. Yeah.
How can we fix that? How can we fix that?
Yeah, this is very important, as I said, to be an independent evaluation. We were in a project some time ago, and we got the Monte Carlo simulation, and the project had a 1% chance of delivering the asset on time, 1%. And then we saw that, and then we asked, but only 1%, and you don't have contingency on your schedule? We said, no. Why not? Because we need to deliver the project on that date. So that's mandatory. But the Monte Carlo showing that it's not going to work. That we know it's a challenge. We'll try. We'll do our best. But we are not allowed to put contingency. So, man, okay, there's not a part of allowing or not allowing. The history shows that you need it. If you have a 1% chance of delivering the project on time, what I can say is that you will not deliver a project on time. So let's treat it up front. And the same is happening to costs. As we just said, that we are not using data to feed our PDCA, our Deming's PDCA cycle. We are still being too aggressive in terms of cost contingencies. And if we see all the work of John Holman, for example, bringing data to this discussion, I've seen mega projects with contingency of 7%, 9%, at the end of FEO3. What history shows us that probably is not going to happen. We see with Professors Ben Flubier and Dan Gardner's book, there's behind me here, where they show that projects are delivered on time and on budget around 8.5% of times. So if I assess the risks, but if I don't bring those risks into my plan, or as a workaround or as a contingency, I'm just waiting for the problem to happen. And what we see in terms of contingency, talking about costs, is just a down payment. It's not the total value that we need. But we don't have the historic data to show us that we are spending 20%, 25%, 30% in other projects. And we are still using the same practices and think that now we are doing for 5 or 7%. So what it happens, as you said a moment before, so many times talking about strategy and strategic leaders, people don't want to go into the final outcomes of a project that was recently delivered, because we'll go back to the decisions that were made during the process that made the project get those fast tracking practices and go to jump right into the execution. And then you have the cost deviation, and then you have the schedule deviation. And most of all, what's really important, when you talk about industrial assets, we see that the factories don't operate at 100% capacity. And I've seen 34%, 40%, 50%. So you want to create value for your company through the asset that will operate for a generation or more, and you bring this quality down by rushing with the LFL phase to get right into execution. So I've been in evaluation, what we call the post-investment reviews, in which the company was clear to say, Andre, that's fine, we'll provide you the project numbers, but we will not touch the operational numbers. We'll not disclose how the plant is operating right now. And why was that? Because executives already knew how much money they had spent on the project, because they needed to approve every change order. And they knew, of course, when the project really started, 1 year or 1.5 year after the planned date. So this was known inside the company. But let's not go into the operational side because we have much bigger problems that we're not producing enough, we're not creating value. So if you bring this all back to the business case that we talked before, we see that the project was not feasible since the beginning, but it's too late now. So you don't want to put light on this. You want to move to the next project. And that's one of my biggest concerns. That's the problem that we say to train with good data if we don't want to look at the data because they will tell the story.
Q&A time. Hold your breath. Awesome. It's now time for questions and answers. I know we had enough for people who have not been able to connect on LinkedIn. I put the link right there as well so you can join us on the other side on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch as well. At times, with technology, as they say, everything that can go wrong at times wants to go wrong, but we are streaming live from all these other platforms. So I just put a link now for YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And I'm going to just do a quick post. I'm going to get someone on my team to post that right there as well. So questions and answers. So a major question that has been coming in, I had this question even before the show was, what has been your major challenge through your career? And how have you been able to break through to move up to strategic leadership as a project manager?
That's a great question. I think there was this transition from my background is too technical. I love to develop schedules and cost estimates and so on. And when I started to look into the real motivators for company to to develop and implement the projects and got this more on the business side, it changed the way that I approach the team and the executives. So, and also understanding that in the technical part, you'll never be perfect. Your project will never be the best project of the world, but you need to assess the right risks that are really the ones that can kill you during execution. So if you manage to do that, the outcomes will appear. So your projects will be better, although they are not perfectly planned. But you could tackle the biggest issues up front and will be recognized for that. So when I started to approach the projects with more of this business view and bringing to my team, the team could also understand, okay, we have a problem here, but that's not big deal. You'll not delay the project delivery or not consume or the whole contingency. Let's treat it like that. So I think that bringing the business side together with the project manager and being able to talk to executives and help them to make better decisions about project management issues.
Yeah, I love that. You just mentioned that you brought the business side to project management because at the end of the day, projects are there to drive strategy. But positioning of the value that you bring is absolutely critical. The C-suite executives want to know how does this impact ROI? How does it impact our shareholder value, right? How does it impact, our social license to operate? How does it impact our regulatory, requirements as well? Because we need to be in business. And so being able to elevate whatever it is that you're doing to tie back into those key drivers is absolutely critical. I absolutely love it. I think it's a piece that is really missing for a lot of project managers, especially where they just focus on your risk, your issues, my cost, my schedule. But being able to elevate the conversation totally changes everything significantly. Another question is, what do you see as the latest trends in the industry when it comes to infrastructure projects? And what do you think PMs and project professionals need to leverage today to be more successful?
I think that as we said before, the first thing is technology. We need to understand how to leverage that in our work, being virtual design, as we talk here, artificial intelligence, integration among different tools. So it changed a lot in the last years, and so many professionals are not prepared for it properly. So the better I understand how to use it in my favor, I will be seen and as more strategic from my executives. That's the first part. The second one is to rethink the way that we implement our projects. And once again, Ben Flubier talks about a lot about it. We need to think more modular. We need to, because it's a fact of life. Our cycle times now are much shorter, and this will continue to go on in the next years. So our challenge is how can we build projects faster with good quality and getting to our results. And we can only do this by modularizing our design. And it will require more planning upfront, but then the project will be able to run during execution. So different approach. We love as engineers to start drawing from scratch, but we can use what we have done in the past and start to think in structures that we can build in a more modular way. You will reduce the risk on the field. You will have opportunity to have work done prior to start of execution with modules outside the offsite construction, and then you can bring in faster to the field. And we can leverage this once again with technology.
I know technology seems to be the winner every day, right? Leveraging technology, but trying to get the balance to ensure that leaders, can share the use of this tech. We leverage resources to have that human knowledge and that support and that relationship building as well. I think the final question is, because of time now as well, is, in a nutshell, how can leaders and project managers take the insights from everything we've shared today and immediately apply them to improve their project management and leadership practices? So give us a quick summary. What are those key takeaways that people need to think about from front-end loading that will help them expedite and accelerate their success today?
I think the most important part is that value is created upfront. We love to execute projects. We love to be on the field and have those big modules come and doing all the assembly and put the big pieces of equipment. But the way that this will unfold during execution is built much before you get on the field. So value is created upfront. We need to have clear objectives of what the company wants with that asset and build a team around those objectives, because this will be the bond among all disciplines to develop, to create, develop, and implement a better asset that you can have for that opportunity. And most of the story that will unfold from the final investment decision until the end of construction is, as I said, heavily influenced by the practices that you apply during project development. So if I want to do a smart investment in my company, I would invest much more in project development, because it's key for value creation that I would then deliver later on execution. So the key part is the project development, is not project execution. I'm not saying that execution is easy. We have all those risks and problems, but I don't want to create more problems during execution by not assessing those risks upfront when I have the opportunity to do it.
I think you've pretty much put the icing on the cake there. Value is created upfront. For us to create the outcomes that we want in execution, you have to put in all the work in upfront, from planning, from all the risk assessment, understanding the objectives, aligning with our stakeholders, making sure the teams are integrated, we're communicating well, the stakeholders are on board, and we can be sure to increase our level of success. I want to say thank you so much. With all the technical issues, somehow we're able to pull it off. It's right on top of the hour. I want to thank Carlos Tabaya. I want to thank so I want to thank him, because there's so many people who joined us from Brazil. We had people from Saudi Arabia, from South Africa, from Egypt. We had from Calgary, Los Angeles, the US. We had, I just want to say thank you so much. But I want people to know that I had a great leader. We had Andrew join us all the way from Brazil. But I want people to know, how can they connect with you? What's on the horizon for you? What are those things that are exciting, and why do people actually be part of your world, and how can they reach you?
Well, you can reach me through LinkedIn. I think it's the easiest platform. I put a lot of content there. I have most of the content in Portuguese, but I need to change it in the near future. But we're happy to connect with every one of you. Please just send me a message there on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help you. I think that we are seeing now those topics are being more on discussion in larger companies, and to master those concepts is key for project success. So if you want to be in a better position in a project team or as a project manager, I'll be happy to assist you and talk about front-end loading.
You just heard it. Oh, Andrew Choma is going to be there to help you. He's logging in all the way from Brazil to be with us. We've had the whole world unite on the Strategic Project Leader podcast. I want to say thank you. It's been a great pleasure to have you. We had ups and downs, but here we are. I always love to end with this. A great leader says he wants to put a thing in the universe. But together, as strategic project leaders, we can come together and create a positive dent in the universe because there is a power of the multiplicity effect. You are your life's project manager, and to make the most of your life, it means your career, your business, your life have to be all aligned. Strategic leadership and project management skills can help you set you on the path to consistently get results every single time. Let's continue the conversations in the chats, as well as you can reach me on follow@abi.com. It's going to be in the comments as well. Let's work together, let's support each other, and let's create a bigger, stronger community. Same time next week, I'm going to have a leader who's going to be talking about all things about hiring and how to position yourself as a strategic project leader to land the best opportunity, sustain the role, and create consistent success. So don't hold that down. Let me know what one thing you're going to be taking away from this episode that I know that you are going to be making practical outcomes and executing on all of this. Thank you so much, Andrew. And don't leave the studio because we're going to be wrapping up and we're going to be sharing some behind the scenes as well. And I want you to know that he's been so kind. He shared 2 key documents. And you do not want to miss that. It's going to be in the show notes as well. There's going to be a link to sign up to actually get that. So click below and make sure you sign up. You're going to get these free resources to learn more about front-end loading. I want to say thank you so much once again. And remember, same time next week, we're going to be live on the Strategic Project Leader podcast. Stay safe and see you soon. Bye.